of the internet. All right, so what I would like to talk about today are neurons. Neurons and drums go together. What do I mean? Okay, something I explain to my students is I'm not going to explain what neurons are, like nerve cells and all that. I'm going to explain what they do on a deeper level in your brain and physiology. So, really, the best way I can describe this in simplicity is neurons equal habits. Okay, so what do I mean? Neurons in the mind build chains. Okay, so for instance, you probably don't have to think about eating a bowl of cereal and watching TV at the same time because you know how to do that. You don't have to think about it. Well, that's called a habit, right? It's called habits, right? So, what does that mean? Well, that means that it's second nature. Your mind doesn't have to learn that, right? So, that's great because that tells us we can change our habit patterns if we want to. So, how does this apply to drums? Something I tell my students all the time is, well, let's say you have a practice circuit, right? Let's say every day you're doing, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to explain what it is because my handwriting is terrible and it's small and you probably can't see this because of the camera. But anyway, let's say you take 30 minutes a day of practice, okay? You have your A, which is your warm-up, B, mobility on the drum set, right? And C, you practice a song or two, let's just say, right? Let's say you have 30 minutes to an hour a day, and you're doing that every day for, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Well, you know what's going to happen at the end of those 3-4 weeks is you're going to have some serious results because the neurons build memory chains or habits, okay? So let's say if you're doing triplets, you want to get better at triplets, okay? So you practice your triplets, right? I don't know if you can see this in the camera because the light from the window is, glaring. But look, let's say you want to get better at triplets. Well, you start practicing triplets. All of a sudden, right here, the neurons in your mind, or your brain, your physiology, form a habitual chain. Okay, so boom, you got triplets. After a while, your body or brain won't have to think about it. You'll just go and you'll play triplets like you never had to learn them. Okay. Same with jazz. Let's say if you want to get better at jazz, and you start doing some jazz exercise, right? And you spend a bunch of weeks on that. Boom, guaranteed, you're going to be able to play some great jazz after a while, and then, I don't know, make whatever you want here, So, point is neurons are a huge deal. Now, people get weirded out because sometimes, in their practice sessions, they're not making the progress that they want. Well, that could be of a couple things, and usually with some of my students is they'll bounce around from one thing to the next. In other words, let's say this is your practice, let's say I put you on a practice plan of some sort. Well, to play, Led Zeppelin on Monday, and then the next day they're playing Tom Sawyer by Rush, and then the next day after that they're playing something completely different. You're not really building a habit pattern, you know what I mean? You're kind of bouncing around, right? These neural chains take a little bit of time, okay? Not a lot, but, they take a little time. Sometimes you have to, it takes a longer time to build something, but it takes seconds to break something down, okay? To tear something down, right? So, now, if you're doing, by the way, this is something I want to mention because I just explained this to a student myself. Now, if you don't have to do hours upon hours of practice, you can. However, I have found that half hour to an hour, maybe an hour and a half tops of committed focus, you can get so much done in an hour or a half hour of daily practice than you would 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in a day. It depends what you're doing, but for the most part, if you have a life, in other words, you have a lot of things going on, that the 6 to 8 hour practice routine probably isn't the best for you. So, hence, for people like me who can't practice 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day because I have businesses to run and all that stuff. I have I have a wife, all that stuff. So it depends where you're at, but you can get just as much done in an hour or a half hour, right? Just as you would in a 4 or 5 hour practice routine. It just depends how you go about it. If you're focused, right? Focus, that's a big deal, okay? If you're focused, your neural habits will start to build. Guaranteed. All right, because you are forming habit patterns. That's really what neurons are, right? That's what they do. They build habit patterns. So I'm not an expert. I just know what they do. So you can teach your body certain things, right? So just like exercise. Well, let's say you're not used to lifting 45-pound, weights with a barbell. Well, if you work out it enough, after a while your body's gonna be like, I got this. Yeah, because you worked at it. You put it into practice. So for drummers who want to make good results, you gotta stick with something. And build a pattern, build a habit, build muscle memory. That's actually the best way I can describe it, is muscle memory. So whatever you want to work on, whether it's jazz, this goes for anything, by the way. If you want to get better at rocket science, it doesn't have to be drums. You want to get better at rocket science, start learning about rocket science and start putting those things into practice. So neurons are important, right? They're habits. Moving my little board here. I wish I had a bigger board, but maybe I'll put it on the big wall over there. So that's what I wanted to describe. Okay, so take your time. Okay, habits take a little while to build, not very long, but you just have to stick with it, right? Stick with it. Even with if I were to give a stupid example, we build a habit of like let's say you're in your grocery store and you're bored standing online to check out. What do? You pull out your phone, you look at your phone, right? Well, you have built a habit, because that's what us humans do. We look at our phones now. So our attention span is 30 seconds here. We can't stay our minds for more than like 5 seconds. So that might be a problem there. Okay. So, but a phone is a tool. So, right. So you need to stick with something, right? Don't spend time on something for don't spend time on something for 30 seconds and then move on. I mean, that's a little ridiculous. Okay. So don't do that. Give yourself time, right? Do at least half hour to an hour and a half, or hour and a half. Okay, so you have a half hour, or hour and a half. I'm sorry, those 3. Or 2 hours. Some people like to put in 2 hours. That's fine if you can focus that long and be okay and not get diminishing returns. Great. Okay, so keep that in mind. Don't be ADD about practice or learning something on the drums, okay? Because that creates a problem. That's why people want to, quit after a while, because they're not seeing the progress that they wanted. Well, how are your practice routines? So that's a big deal. Your practice habits are a big deal. So that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful. I'm sure I messed something up here, my information. I really should look at a textbook before making this, but I got the point across, so that's good. So, all right, if you have any questions, hit me up on email or give me a phone call. Otherwise, see you next time.